Hello and welcome everyone to our monthly luncheon. And my name is Pavement, and I serve on the president of the Central Ohio section of ASCE. And before we started, I wanted to give off a few announcements about our upcoming luncheons. Our next month, November luncheon will be an ethics seminar, an ethics presentation, which will be an in-person event, a discussion of Registration Act and professional ethics for engineers and surveyors, and will be on Thursday, November 17th, and more information on that will be shared with you all later. And our December luncheon will be also very likely in person, and it will be a City of Columbus department updates. And I also wanted to mention that we have a few open positions at ASC, so if anyone is interested in getting involved, please reach out to us. And last but not least, please type in your name and email on the chat if you're requesting PDHs from us, and we will be verifying that. And uh, and now introducing our speaker for today, Gordon Meth. I'm going to move him to the stage here. Okay. Gordon Meth has nearly 30 years of professional experience in traffic engineering, including analysis, design, testimony, and forensic investigation. He is currently an expert witness for Robson Forensic. He has a bachelor and master's degree in civil engineering from University of Waterloo and a master's of business administration from Montclair State University. A licensed professional engineer in 24 states, Gordon has been a member of ITE Institute of Transportation Engineers for over 30 years, and he's the current chair of the Traffic Engineering Council. Um, in the past, Gordon has served in a number of leadership positions, including president of Metropolitan New York, New Jersey section of ITE and chair of the Northeastern District of ITE. Okay, so without further ado, Gordon, I'll let you take off. And if you have any questions, use the chat function to let us know, and we'll pass that to Gordon towards the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Payman. So my name's Gordon Meth. I work with Thomas Lydon, so he invited me to give this presentation to you today. So I guess at this point, probably nearly 2 years ago, new changes were proposed for a new manual on uniform traffic control devices. And as the chair of Traffic Engineering Council, the ITE assigned each of the councils to review the proposed changes and consolidate to get a uniformed response from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And Traffic Engineering Council, we had pretty well had to review the entirety of all the proposed changes. So that's when I first heard this presentation, and just that's kind of the background on it. And just for those of you from Ohio, so you know, it is the federal manual is the manual on uniform traffic control devices. I know Ohio calls it the manual of uniform traffic control devices. So just keep that in mind if you're ever asked about that. So first, my quick disclaimer: all of this presentation is really not a comprehensive item-by-item review. I'm concentrating on the areas of significant changes to transportation professionals, as opposed to any one individual area of specialization. If you want to know more, the proposed changes are publicly available for more details on the MUTCD webpage. So with that being said, let's start at the very beginning. What is a traffic control device? A traffic control device is anything that communicates with road user about the condition, direction, and information relevant to the travel tasks as you use the road. Really, it encompasses signs, pavement markings, signals. A traffic control device must fulfill a need, command attention, convey a clear, simple meaning, command respect from road users, and give adequate time for a proper response. So what is the MUTCD? The Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, uniform being the operative word. It was adopted by federal regulations It was first established in 1930. The latest edition that we've been living with for a long time is the 2009 edition, which may very well be one of the longest stretches between editions, with 3 revisions. Just a couple of months ago, there was a new revision put in, even though there's proposed changes to it, for in August 2022, for pavement marking retroreflectivity information, including compliance date. Something is blocking the slides, I've been told. Hang on. Any help, Payman?
I can see the slides. I'm not really sure. Maybe let me see if I can. Is that better now? I think I just removed you off the stage, but we're still able to see your slides.
Okay. No, hey, I think it's okay. I'm just, okay. Other people are saying they can see the slides fine. So the MUTCD regulates all traffic control devices in the U.S. on public roads and private roads open to public travel. A little bit more on that in a little bit. Promotes safe and efficient utilization of the road system. And the basic concept is simple: to treat same situations the same way to improve road user response and therefore safety. So the whole idea is, by being uniform, we improve people's understanding of what traffic control devices are and improve the reaction time. So states are permitted to develop their own MUTCD so long as they meet the minimum standard of the federal MUTCD, and it's approved within 2 years of the adoption of MUTCD. 10 states, including Ohio, have their own MUTCDs. 18 states do not have their own MUTCD or supplements. All other, excuse me, all other states and jurisdictions have supplement to the MUTCD where they put some local information, but they keep the federal manual as is. Within the MUTCD, items are expressed in various levels. The first, most important, is a standard. It's required, mandatory, or prohibited. It's in bold. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as a shall condition. It actually hasn't been called a shall condition since at least 1988, to my knowledge. But people in the industry still call it that. The next item is guidance. It's recommended, but not a mandatory practice. Some people take the attitude that, and it used to be more or less called recommended, saying this is something you should do unless there's a good, excuse me, an overriding good reason not to. The third item is an option, which is an allowable modification to a standard or guidance. So an option can change something. And then the last item is support. It's just informational statements. It doesn't really say there's an action or anything. It's just giving you some background. So those are the 4 levels you're going to find in MUTCD. The current MUTCD contains over 900 standard statements, or shall conditions, for those of you that still talk in those terms. So what is the process that we're going through right now? The notice of proposed amendments was published on the Federal Register on December 14th, 2020. It was really nice of the feds to put it out just before the holidays, and catch us all off guard while we're all focused on COVID and being locked down. It contains 647 different proposed changes. And those proposed changes include 15% more standard statements than the current, 1,100 standard statements. There was an extension of the comment period on February 2nd, 2021, thanks to the fact that they released it in the middle of the holidays. So the comments were due on May 14th, 2021. There were 26,522 comments received. That, of course, the 2009 edition only had like about 15,000 comments. So that was a large increase in the number of comments. So right now, the comment resolutions are in process. I'm sure one of the questions everyone's going to ask, or some people are going to ask, or maybe they're too polite to ask, is when do I expect the manual to be released? I will tell you this: I am not an expert on federal rulemaking, so I don't know how long it's going to take. I do know that Congress put in a provision where they wanted it in the IIJA Act, where they wanted it released within I think by May of 2023, and they want updates every few years instead of a very long stretch in between. I don't know if I was a civil servant and Congress told me I had to finish something by a certain deadline. I don't know if I would actually comply with that or not. It depends. But there is a good chance we will see it in 2023. The one thing I can guarantee is it's not very, more likely than not, it's not going to be 2021, 22 at this point. So some of the new compliance dates that are contained in the manual. The first is low clearance signs. There's going to be a 5-year compliance date from the adoption of the manual. High profile grade crossing signs, 10 years. Traffic signals at or near grade crossings, 10 years for compliance with the manual. And if no, here's a very interesting fact about the MUTCD, and it's in the language of the manual in a shall condition, the current manual. If the no compliance date is specified, then compliance is achieved through systematic upgrading as existing devices wear out and need to be replaced. So that means whenever you replace a stripe or a sign, you're supposed to bring it into compliance with the current manual or a traffic signal. The exceptions that you're permitted usually have to do with if changing this one device would compromise other devices for consistency's sake. And there's other provisos for traffic signals, like say if you have 8-inch heads that don't comply with the current manual, you're allowed to use them for the extent of their useful life. One example, though, of the periodic systematic upgrading is PennDOT, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Rather than have to measure the retroflectivity of all their signs, uses an 18-year lifespan for a sign, a traffic sign. So the idea is every 18 years, all their signs have inventory stickers in the back saying what month and year they were installed. Every 18 years, they're supposed to be replaced. And when they're replaced, they're supposed to be brought into the current, up to the current manual. So MUTCD, as I said at the beginning, applies to public and private sites. So the language is there right now. And it was in 2007 that the MUTCD actually put in rules that applied to public or to private property, the MUTCD rules. They are proposing to change the language to make that a little more self-evident, because the current language within the MUTCD talks about private road open to public travel. And you really have to go through the frequently asked questions to understand what's the private road in other publications, as opposed to like a parking lot or other area that is not included. The proposed language changes it to site roadways open to public travel to make it a lot more self-evident of what that means. There's an expanded list of some of the example locations mentioning private or public ownership in the proposed changes. There's also a new definition for right-of-way public highway. Right now, there really isn't a good definition of it, and the definition will include the full right-of-way, rest areas, and scenic overlooks and way stations. So that's part of the new definition. There's also a new definition for what a shoulder is. Right now, I think most of us know what a shoulder is. However, there's no good definition if you're ever asked for it to say what is a shoulder. So that's being added to the manual as well. Major emphasis of changes. So these are the main areas for which, that I'm going to be talking about today. Edge and lane line pavement marking widths is one of them. Speed limit setting, that's another. Crosswalk markings, pavement colors, revised stop, yield, and always stop application guidance and warrants. Volume, functional classifications for horizontal curves. Multimodal, bicycles, automated vehicles, transit, and pedestrians. Those are the areas where there's a lot of changes. Engineering study emphasis. This is one of the things that's contained in it is the decision to establish multi-way stop or traffic signal control at an intersection is based on an engineering study. Now, this is not really a change from the 2009 MUTCD. It's just a clarification or making it more front and center. Numerical warrants are part of the study and not the sole criteria. That is being emphasized in the new manual as well. And setting speed limits requires an engineering study. There's an expansion of the factors proposed for that purpose. Lane and edge line widths. Due to both automated driving systems and safety research into human factors, there's recommendations to actually widen lane and edge line widths in certain circumstances. Proposed nominal their normal width lanes are as follows: 6-inch wide for freeways, 6-inch wide where the speed limit is greater than 40 miles per hour, and 4 to 6-inch wide for all other roadways. Right now, 4 inches is the width, just for those of you that aren't that familiar with it. Proposed wide lanes, which is an application sometimes in MUTCD, would be as follows: 8 inches where 4 to 5 inches of the normal line widths, or 10 inches where 6-inch normal line widths occur. The Institute of Transportation Engineers is concerned that the cost implications of this change haven't been addressed. Given that there's no standard for assessing the condition of lane markings, wider lanes would last longer, as there's really 50% more material to wear away versus the 4-inch edge lines. So just so you know, I've come to understand that there's actually no standard for saying, looking at a pavement marking and saying this no longer is good, except for the fact that the new MUTCD just adopted retroreflectivity standards for pavement markings. So you're going to have to come up with the retroreflectivity. It's a little hard to figure that out, though, in daylight. And some of the standards that are out there, usually for work zones, refer to what percent of the lane line still exists. Like in a work zone, a lane line is supposed to be not acceptable after 10% of the material is gone. So it has to be at least 90% there. A lot of agencies use probably closer to 50%. So interestingly enough, at least 30 states have policies where they actually use 5 to 6-inch edge lines already. They just do. And highway safety manual research has really found that 6-inch edge lines reduce fatal and injury crashes by 15 to 38% versus a 4-inch edge line. So the reality is, even though people think this is only because of autonomous vehicles, there's a safety benefit to putting in wider edge lines. And the other thing is that really the cost often for striping is labor. So putting down more material, putting a 6-inch edge line versus a 4-inch is really just changing the nozzle and using a little bit more material. I don't know if it really has the cost implications that ITE was afraid of when they wrote their comment letter, even though I was on the committee and part of the people that wrote that. So let's jump to speed limit signs for a minute. I've juxtapositioned what the current manual says on certain items versus what the proposed has. The current manual says an engineering study is required for a speed limit sign. The proposed would also still require one. Speed distribution within the study is required in the current manual. The proposed change would only be speed distribution is only recommended. So this gives you a little more flexibility to actually conduct a speed limit study and not without having to go collect speed distribution data. I think you should still do it, but if you're in a pinch, you don't necessarily have to. I'd also say that there's an interestingly enough, if you look to the definitions in the MUTCD, two things that are talked about are engineering study and engineering judgment. So engineering study just means it's written by an engineer. And engineering judgment means a decision was made by an engineer. So the big difference between the judgment and the study is documentation. I remember once being asked in a deposition, did I conduct an engineering study for a certain traffic control device in private property? And I said, well, I'm an engineer and I performed an analysis of this. So yeah, I performed an engineering study, because that's what the definition is. It was an analysis or a written finding by an engineer. So getting back to our list, the current manual recommends that the speed be within 5 miles per hour of the 85th percentile speed. And I know a lot of people actually have used this religiously, and it's been used, and it is probably one of the main sources of complaints from all those comments that were received. So the proposed change says the 85th percentile speed is only recommended for freeways, expressways, and rural arterials. And really, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that the speed of traffic is of major concern for bicycles and pedestrians and basically bicyclists and pedestrians and their safety. So only focusing on the speed of traffic, the feeling is that does a disservice to those groups. So that's why urban roadways have been left out of that, the recommendation. Factors included in the engineering studies are optional in the current manual. Within the proposed, there's expanded factors included in the engineering studies which are recommended. So here's the expanded factors that you can expect to see in speed studies. The speed distribution, crash experience, road characteristics such as lane widths, shoulder condition, sight distance, grade, alignment, or median type. Road context, that would be the roadside development environment, functional classification, curbside uses and activity, and pedestrian activity and bicycling activity. So here's a quick history of speed limits and the MUTCD. The first is that, so the first time there was any recommendation of setting speed limits was the 1948 edition. It really first recommended speed studies to establish speed limits. That was where it was introduced. 1971 edition mentioned both the 85th percentile speed and the pace speed when setting speed limits. The pace speed is when you distribute all the speeds for traffic. It's the speed at which the 10 mile an hour band or range that the majority of drivers travel within. And sometimes you can study pace in saying what percentage of traffic complies with being in the pace or is in the pace. If you do a standard speed study, a lot of the data collection machines will tell you what the pace percentage in the pace is and what the pace is. So that would be, say the posted speed was 35 miles an hour. The pace may very well be 30 to 40 miles per hour. It was the 2000 edition that added guidance that the speed limit should be within the 5 miles per hour of the 85th percentile speed. That is the first time that was ever discussed in MUTCD, that we should be setting speed limits within 5 miles an hour of the 85th percentile speed. And the thought process was fairly simple at the time, and I believe it still holds true today in many instances, is that if you basically just change the speed limit, it's not going to change speeding. There was a study by the federal government, by the FHWA, or back in 1999. They looked at 100 locations and measured the before and after speeds when speed limits were changed up or down 5 to 20 miles an hour. And you know what they found is that the average speed changed by only 1 to 2 miles an hour. That's it. People tend to read the road and drive what they feel it's comfortable for. That's the issue. And just in case everyone's not aware, 85th percentile speed is the speed at which 85% of traffic is traveling at or below. Kind of a reasonable person's approach. We don't design for every extreme, but the speed at which approximately 6 out of 7 people travel. So up to. So it's the 85th percentile. I think statistically it comes from being the median plus 1 standard deviation, because that's 1 standard deviation is 34%. You take the median, that's 84%, rounded to 85. So the use of the 85th percentile speed, as I mentioned earlier, has really been a large problem for speed management and a major source of concern for safety of bicycles and pedestrians in urban areas. That's why we're talking about it. That's why it's an issue. So jumping ahead to other topics, crosswalks. There's a lot of focus in the new manual on crosswalks. Part of the new guidance. Because non-intersection pedestrian crossings are generally unexpected by the road user, warning signs and high visibility crosswalk markings should be installed. That's what's some of the language in the new manual. I'll just tell you a quick story. Right now, the only thing that is required that's actually required for a crosswalk, mid-block or otherwise, or actually for a mid-block crosswalk, is 2 parallel white lines, the basic that is shown in this slide. That's it. Signs are recommended but not required. We had on a traffic engineering council call where we had participation from somebody from New Zealand, some people from New Zealand and Australia. They were aghast that that's all it takes to have a crosswalk in the US. All right, that just 2 parallel white lines, that's it. So the proposed change is to use high visibility crosswalk markings. That would be basically piano keys, a ladder, or just a double paired thing. So something high visibility that has a lot more target value to the motorist. That's if you're doing a non-intersection crossing at some location that establishes a crosswalk. The curb ramps now need to be within the crosswalk lines. That is another component. Right now, that's only recommended. It's not, or it's a suggestion. It's not an actual requirement. And there is no more restriction on having mid-block crosswalks within 300 feet of an existing signal. In the current manual, you're not supposed to have mid-block crosswalks within 300 feet of an existing signal because the expectation is that people will divert and go to the signal, cross there, and come back. A signal being a place where one would expect pedestrians to cross. Well, the reality is this. Most people don't want to go that far out of their way and back. So they're crossing anyway. So by restricting that ability, we're not changing behavior. We're just creating a false sense of security and preventing the ability to do something about it. There's new guidance on decorative treatments for crosswalks, a new section on RRFBs, rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And hybrid beacons, those are the hawk signals, are now allowed to be installed at intersections and driveways. There's really nothing restricting them now, except some guidance that tells you shouldn't do it, but nothing that is actually binding. So here's just an example of here's an example of the RRFB to the side, and there's some other graphic examples of the options you'll have for decorative treatment. The important thing when you have decorative treatment, though, is those white lines on the edge of it are still critical to the value of that crossing. Crosswalks and traffic signals. So some of the requirements that are in the new manual: 1, pedestrian heads are going to be required at any signalized intersection with a crosswalk. A marked crosswalk will require to have a pedestrian signal head. Right now, it's not required. There's a buffer that was introduced in the last manual, 2009 manual, of 3 seconds between when a crosswalk, the walk indication, or the flash and don't walk ends and conflicting traffic can be released. That's being reduced to 2 seconds instead of 3. I think the major reason for that change is a lot of jurisdictions use 2 seconds of all red clearance now to make that consistent rather than make them add in a whole extra second. Clearance, and the funny thing is, somebody once told me the only thing you need to know to be a traffic engineer is how many seconds there are in an hour. Really, all that is it's dividing the traffic signal just divides that right away into a bunch of seconds constantly. So every second matters when you're designing a traffic signal timing plan. Clearance times now include the shoulder instead of just the edge of the travel way. Right now, you have to provide clearance time for the edge of the travel way to the edge of the travel way. The only thing is research is showing that people are not actually waiting at the edge of the shoulder before crossing. They're staying off the road. So that's why now the shoulder is going to be included in that width. So basically, before it was the edge of the travel way, which would not include the shoulder, and now it's going to be the shoulder. And then it's your clearance is needed until you get out of conflict from traffic. That hasn't changed. That isn't proposed to change. There's an inclusion now for touch-free pedestrian push buttons. What really changed that is the dynamic that was changed was the part that changed that was really, in many respects, the pandemic, where people didn't want to touch buttons. So we put a lot of jurisdictions, a lot of them put their signals on recall for pedestrian phases all the time. There's a new figure for push button placement. And this one photo is just my favorite example. The site's under construction, so I don't think it's there, but the fact that you have a pedestrian push button behind a guide rail and a pile of dirt and snow. Warrants. So some of the things that are changing with the warrants. Number one, there's going to be a whole new specific section on warrants for minor street or all-way stop control. There's more specific, including crash experience thresholds and sight distance. And bicycle and pedestrian needs are going to be included. Right now, there is no actual requirement within the stop control for either two-way or all-way stop control. There's only a bunch of recommendations. For signals, engineering study no longer requires all the information be reviewed. Not all 8 or 9 warrants have to be reviewed in detail. The warrants themselves are also no longer standards in the proposed change, which really does allow that traffic signals that don't actually meet the numerical warrants, but are still appropriate based on engineering judgment, can now be installed. There's been significant revisions to the crash warrant. And that's actually already been incorporated through an interim approval. There's no more prohibition on school or pedestrian signals within 300 feet of another signal. And one of my pet peeves, there's been no changes to volume warrants whatsoever, the volumes themselves. So crash experience warrant. As mentioned, it's already been approved via interim approval number 19. So there's expanded criteria. 1 year and 3 year crash evaluation periods are now. Crash type and severity is included. The population size, speeds greater than 40 miles per hour. There's adjustment factors for that for crash. Intersection geometry, meaning is it a 3-way intersection or a 4-way intersection? One of the issues with signal warrants, I'll get into this first, and then I'll get into something else that bothers me. But one of the issues with signal warrants is that peak hour and volume warrants that we have right now have remained unchanged since the 1978 manual. They have not been updated since then. I was 11 years old in 1978, and I wasn't even born in 1961. The 8-hour volume warrants that we use haven't been changed since 1961. And when they were used in 1961, they were actually for pre-time signals. You were not required to meet the volume warrants for the 8-hour on the side street if your signal was actuated. That was in 1961. They removed that in 1970. What I remember of the 70s, that may very well be with the fact that nobody maintained their loops. So the actuated signal became a pre-time signal pretty quickly. The requirement that crashes have to be reportable also creates inconsistencies by jurisdiction. Right? 16 states, little or no damage or any damage to a vehicle is reportable. First of all, injuries or fatalities are always reportable crashes. But when it comes to property damage only crashes, in 16 states, little or any damage is reportable, but in 3 states, only one vehicle actually needs to be towed away. So in Ohio, you need to have $1,000 total damage to be a reportable crash. And with most cars today and the cost of repairing them, that's not even a major collision. However, in the adjacent state of Pennsylvania, one of the cars has to be towed for it to be reportable. And my practice group leader actually was a police officer in Harrisburg before he became, even though he graduated engineering school and then became an engineer later. And he said they used to go to great lengths to try to get people to drive their car away, keep encouraging them so they could do less paperwork. Okay, so it's not consistent across our whole country, but yet the crash experience warrant still focuses on reportable crashes. So what is a reportable crash? Injury, fatality, or property damage over only varying amounts. 3 states is any damage whatsoever. 13 states, it's $300 to $700 damage. My home state of New Jersey, it's $500. 19 states, it's $1,000 to $1,500 total damage, including Ohio. 10 states, it's $1,000 to $2,500 damage to one party, meaning each car has to have at least $1,000 damage or $2,500. 2 states, it's got to be $3,000 total damage. 3 states, one of the cars or more can't drive away. That means one state could allow a signal based on a crash experience that would not be approved across a border that may only be like 100 feet away. So that's one of the problems with the current manual that has not been addressed. Flashing yellow arrow, which is already approved via interim approval number 17. Flashing yellow arrows, what these are is they basically flash to tell you can make a yellow as long as you yield to oncoming, or you can make a left as long as you yield to oncoming traffic. So it improves the safety and provides more left turning phasing options. But there's the optional use of 3-section and 5-section signal faces. And flashing and steady yellow arrows in the same signal section. So what happens is the proposed changes would actually allow you to take that one yellow signal and do it instead of having to have 2 separate heads in your signal. Overhead signs on conventional roads. This is another proposed change from the MUTCD. The letter size, proposed letter size to be commensurate with context. So what happens is for conventional roadways, right now, if you follow the guidance, the guidelines are really designed for freeways and expressways. You can actually, within the proposed changes, there will be smaller letter sizes needed on conventional roads, which gives you the ability to use lighter weight mast arms, smaller ones, and it's really better suited to urbanized conditions where needed. Horizontal curves. I think there's an unwritten rule in MUTCD that every edition of the manual has to totally change everything about horizontal curves. Every edition that I've worked with in my career, every time you get a new manual, the information on horizontal curves changes. And if you look in the and this was one of the items that had a hard compliance date of December 31st, 2019, meaning every single horizontal curve in use had to be signed or marked as required by the current MUTCD by that date. There was, and in the frequently asked questions of MUTCD, you can find that when asked about why can't you use more engineering judgment on this and leave things the way they were, the answer is 28% of our fatal crashes in this country come from runoff road crashes on horizontal curves. So this is our weakest link when it comes to our transportation systems, and at least for fatal crashes. So the proposed changes include deleting the reference to 1,000 vehicle AADT. So the right now you're required to follow the rules if you have more than 1,000 vehicles a day. So it's going to be replaced with this table 2C-4A for devices. Now the interesting thing is that the new changes actually incorporate considering pavement markings. The current ones don't. So you get a break or could basically have less signs for a given volume if you have pavement markings versus roads that don't. That's the main difference. And it tells you what when you select your devices for your horizontal chain alignment. So the next table, 2C-4B, is the application. So in this case, this is one of the only instances, I believe, in the MUTCD that focuses on posted speed instead of actual operating speed. Most of the time, most factors are based on operating speed, meaning that if your speed limit is artificially low and everybody's driving faster, you should be using the actual speed. But in this case, the speed differential really refers to what the safe operating speed of is a horizontal curve versus the posted speed limit. So if your speed differential is 5 miles an hour, everything is optional. and they talk about pavement markings or advanced other warnings and or signs. 10 miles an hour, recommend it. 15 miles an hour or more, you are required to do something. Use delineators and horizontal alignment warning signs or chevrons if it's 20 miles per hour or more. That's what you're required to do. Okay, vehicle speedback signs. A lot of us are probably becoming familiar with this. So this is a traffic control device. So there are some actual requirements being proposed for the current manual. One of the main factors is standardized designs for the sign and the plaque, and a yellow background color being required because the message when it shows your speed is a warning, not a regulation. Now, some of the best practice is to actually have a real speed limit sign. And for those of you that aren't that familiar with it, anything that's a sign that's white on black is regulatory. Yellow is the color used for warnings. So the best practice is to put an actual regulatory sign and then a feedback sign right there to kind of show people if there's a difference. There are provisions for the use of speed limit signs and horizontal alignment signs using the driver feedback signs within them to basically just help you navigate through an intersection. There's curb extensions. So there's a whole new section on islands designated by pavement markings, as opposed to just raised islands. This has become very common in urban areas to reclaim space and cut pedestrian crossing distances, is to actually use use textured pavement or colored pavement to take away travel roadway with. So there's a new section on the use of tubular markings to delineate these, and on obstructions in the roadway, a new section on obstructions in the roadway, which require object warnings and pavement markings when you have raised islands. Now, here's the interesting thing. The current manual does say that if you follow and put together the various things said in different places, that anytime you have a raised island, you are supposed to be putting some kind of object marker or warning sign on it. But the new proposed change to the manual makes that a lot more explicit. And that really includes channelization islands. That's an area where I often see no kind of object marker or warning used on. Colored pavement. The proposed change to the MUTCD will intend to regulate colored pavement. So yellow colored pavement means areas separating opposing traffic, just like yellow line. White colored pavement, areas separating the same direction traffic and right side shoulders, just like the colors of stripes. Green colored pavement would be for bicycle only facilities. Red colored pavement, transit only or transit preferential lanes. Purple colored pavement, lanes within and at entrances to open road tolling facilities. Section, part 5 of the MUTCD, devoted to low volume roads, is proposed to be eliminated. A low volume road were defined as roads with less than 400 vehicles a day outside built up areas of towns, cities, and communities. Everything in this section is being taken away and moved to the appropriate section of the manual as an option for a low volume road environment. Automated vehicles. There's a new section. So that's why they had to get rid of part 5 so they can free it up for automated vehicles. In this section, nothing is a requirement. It's only guidance. Agencies decide whether to fit their roads for automated vehicles. There's no mandate to do so. The new section provides agencies interested in automated vehicle systems a set of criteria in using current body of knowledge. Recommended factors include lane widths, sign orientation, the refresh and flicker rate for LED signs and signals, and ghost lines and work zones. Meaning you need to do a better job sometimes of obliterating or eradicating existing lines when you're at work. Temporary traffic control. Most of the changes in the section on temporary traffic control, part 6, are only rearranging information, not any change to what you have to do. The one area that there is a change is related to the accommodation of pedestrians with disabilities, so it changes the consideration of level of usage by pedestrians and disabilities in design decisions. So all pedestrian detours need to be accessible, period. That is the one change in the manual. Right now, there is consideration that if you don't have frequent pedestrian use, you can actually do a little less. No, now, if you're interfering with traffic, you have to detour pedestrians, just like shown in this little picture, which it was a real work zone that I found in the field one day. I guess there's no spelling check for people that make custom signs. Bicycle signage and pavement markings. There are several new signs for bicycles. And there's new requirements on placement of shared lane markings, which are also known as sharrows. So there's actually requirements in their placement. Bicycles and signalized intersections. There's a lot of changes relative to this. There are now bicycle signals covered. There actually are in the current manual, but it's been really expanded. Two-stage bicycle turn boxes. The whole point is to let the bicycles get in front of the cars so they can make their move. Intersection bicycle boxes, where there's an example in the picture here where you put a bicycle box in the middle of the intersection where the bicycle is expected to wait, and bicycle detector markings telling you where to stop to make sure you're detected by a vehicle. Hence the picture up in the upper right. Wait here for green. Bicycle lanes. Colored pavement. There's sections for separated bicycle lanes, buffered bicycle lanes, and contraflow facilities, meaning those that go against the direction of traffic. And guidance on using the green to go to take people through the intersection. Busway grade crossings. There's a whole new section for busways, for grade crossings, which addresses buses in semi-exclusive alignments. Proposed guidance recommends equipping busway grade crossings with active warning systems, which makes them a lot more like flashing light signals. All right, so active warning systems makes them a lot more like rail grade crossings. Provides an option for automatic gates to be used. Gates would comply with provisions for the rail grade crossings. Light rail transit grade crossings. Proposed requirement for at least one crossbuck per approach. Proposed requirement to use active traffic control systems where the LRT speed exceeds 25 miles per hour. Revise existing standard to require automatic gates where the LRT speeds exceed 40 miles an hour. And similar requirements for pathways and sidewalks within 25 feet of the crossing. So that actually concludes the presentation I've got. Once again, this is not an exclusive, this is not everything that's in the manual. These are just the high points. Number one, it's too late to comment. Number two, so this is where we are in the process. We had our first publication on December 14th, 2020. Comments were due May 14th, 2021. The 2009 MUTCD only had 15,000 comments, whereas this one had 26,000 comments, 500. A lot of them having to do with the speed limit setting. So right now, the federal government is in the process of reviewing the comments and addressing. So they have to revise the draft to consider the comments, and then they're going to publish the final rule adopting the new edition of MUTCD in the Federal Register. There is no requirement to go back to the public and take more comments. Anyway, with that concludes my presentation. So if Payment, if you want to open it up or give me whatever questions are there, we're doing good on time.
Appreciate it. I'm looking at the chat, so I open the floor for questions. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and get the questions. give it a few minutes and see if any questions.
Leave the screen sharing up so I can flip back to the presentation if I have to answer questions. Otherwise, I'll take it off if.
Okay, I don't see any questions from anyone on the chat, or yeah, I suppose that is the end. Thank you very much, Gordon,
Wait,
and we
one just
appreciate it.
came up. A question just came up. So wait, what was that?
Yeah, this is from Ken Richardson. Question is there any maximum width between crosswalks line?
So if I understand the question correctly, I believe it's, is there a maximum width of a crosswalk before you have to basically put a refuge island or something else in? Not in the manual. That doesn't, not in the MUTCD, to my knowledge. It's not proposed, to my knowledge. I will tell you, I'm aware of maybe a couple of state codes from DOTs that recommend that you don't have more than 60 feet for a crossing. There's a lot of crossings that are a lot longer than that. I was just looking at an intersection down in Florida. Man, they have some big intersections. Takes you about an hour to get across some of the crosswalks down there.
This is Ken. I asked the question. On the crosswalk striping, the minimum width is 6 foot, I believe. What is the maximum width for a crosswalk?
Oh, it had to do with the width. I thought you were talking about the length of the crossing.
Not the length, the width.
There is no maximum to my knowledge. And you will see in some major cities, sometimes they have 20, 30 feet. But I will also put a little caveat in that. So a lot of shopping centers, private property, have hatched areas in front of all the doors. You know, you think your Walmarts or your Targets or something where there's a big striped area, right? MUTCD came out with an interpretation letter in 2012 about that, saying that they don't think that meets the definition of being understandable by motorists. So they recommend that you have a series of smaller crosswalks leading to the various aisles there instead of one big striped area. Because the striping that's used sometimes actually is the exact same as kind of what's used for don't block the box for intersections, as opposed to a crosswalk. So I don't know if that answers your question, Ken, and I don't believe there's been any change to the minimum.
It did answer the question. Here in Columbus, because of ADA, requirements, we have ramps, and then crosswalk striping is considerably wider than any ramp, 20 feet, 25 feet. It's sort of like the driver's expectation. You drive up on just a simple crosswalk marking, striping. You don't even get the sense that you're coming into a crosswalk because the lines are so far apart. It's like driver's expectation. I mean,
and I would look to that. If you have to, I would look to that clarification letter. MUTCD, they have all their clarification letters that you can look at. And there's one from 2012. Specifically, it's about crosswalk markings on private properties, but I think it would apply to the public as well if the striping is too wide.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. Thank you very much, Gordon. I really appreciate it, and thanks everyone. And see you guys at the next luncheon. Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.